Hey Money Vikings, welcome back to the channel. I've got an interesting one for you today, so sit back, relax. Let's check this out together. I'm going to talk about, you can see it off to the side here, I'm going to talk about the simple path to wealth. So I just want to have a conversation about this, and it's going to be a little bit stream of consciousness, although I know the topics I'm going to talk about. But the main drive of this video, and have this on in the background because I think you'll find this inspirational. I think you'll find it informative. Please like and subscribe to the channel because the whole goal of this channel is to boil down the simple ways to live a money Viking life of true wealth, right? Which is a combination of wealth, investing, and health and relationships. It's all that stuff combined. So I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 things here. And they're the things that I've seen over the decades that literally lead to a life of wealth. And it's not the cliche sort of advice of, yeah, everybody knows now, do a budget, live below your means, invest at least 10%, try to invest more, etc. But I think there's more to it than that, as we all know. Because if it was that simple, and if everyone was doing that, then everyone would be wealthy. But the reality is that very few people are doing that. It's growing, I think. I think it's growing. I think it's growing because of channels like Money Vikings and all the other great content out there. I think there's more awareness than there ever was. There was not this access to information and inspiration in the past. Maybe you could get the information, but you probably would have a hard time getting the inspiration. Actually, it was probably hard to get both. And the only way you would actually really be able to build wealth or learn how to invest was if you are lucky enough to have a family member that taught you something or was an example. And there can be an example of what to do, and there's an example of what not to do. I think that was actually, he's a little bit controversial now, and I kind of see why. I find him a little bit wacky, but you know, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books by Kiyosaki were pretty cool. They were ahead of their time in a lot of ways. And obviously the books have sold gazillions of copies, so there must be something to it that resonates with people. In modern times, it feels like this guy's gotten a little wacky, but that's okay. Just a little conspiracy theory, always thinking that the market's going to tank. Never does. And it'll go down again. We know that. There's going to be some point where the broad stock market goes down. And for those of you with a long-term horizon and you're building a passive income machine and for the future, it's a buying opportunity. It's a chance to pick up assets on sale, as Warren Buffett has always done. So I'm a long-term bull on the US. I think we're going to be just fine in the long run. So anyway, back to the point here. One thing that Rich Dad, Poor Dad taught us were good examples and bad examples of building wealth. I don't love the books, but anyway, I'm getting off track here. That's not the point. I'm not doing a review of that. So the simple path to wealth. The first thing I want to talk about, and you can see it, I have it up here on the left, is managing the hedonic treadmill. So first of all, what is the hedonic treadmill? So the hedonic treadmill is actually a psychology term. And it has to do with this idea that once we get a certain standard of living as it goes up, we actually, our happiness doesn't, and our satisfaction is only happy and satisfied from that for a little while before we plateau, and it just becomes normal. So the classic example is sometimes people like to have, I guess we're in the year 2024, so this is probably not a good example anymore, but people like to have a steak dinner. And that is a on a, like a special, that was a special occasion food. You'd have a steak dinner at a fancy steak restaurant. People always think of that as like the, you know, the pinnacle of dining, fine dining or something, or whatever. Let's just say let's say going to a fancy restaurant, the whole experience. It doesn't have to be steak. It could be a beautiful fish dish of some kind with just some awesome food, great culinary experience. And it's in a beautiful setting where you can see the ocean and artwork and you have people waiting on you, blah, blah, blah. So yes, it's great. Yes, it's nice. But the reality is if you did that every day for every single meal, just imagine this for a minute. You did that every day, every single meal, you would get bored of it and you'd get actually tired of it. And then someone would say, well, gosh, you have the 5-star Michelin chef or whatever cooking you a meal, every single meal, every day in the most beautiful setting. Probably after about a few days, even, or a week, you take it for granted. And you just might be like, yeah, it's good. You know, it's kind of normal. It's my normal life. So what happens is people then seem to want to, they need to like go higher and higher. So then maybe it's like you have to have like a restaurant in space or something. So you have to have a space restaurant. So you're spending more and more money to be in space. Then you're in space every day eating a 5-star meal. And then you're like, well, I need to go. So anyway, the point is we get used to certain things. So the other part of it is that we live in a hyper consumerism commercial society, which has its good points. And I talk about that. But on the other hand, it has its challenges for us because we're constantly being bombarded with commercials that are telling us that we don't have enough and we need this next thing, this next whatever it is, you know, this newest car, this or that. Okay. The point of this being the simple path to wealth is you've got to create an understanding of this concept and somehow be able to delay gratification at times and appreciate and have gratitude for what you have. So for example, if you live in, you know, let's just say in a modern society in Switzerland or the United States or wherever, and you can have any kind of food you want, you have a steady, good job, reasonably good, you have housing, you have a car, you go on a vacation, you have a lot, right? So you really need to be aware of that before you try to just think like, oh, everything, you know, I need the next thing. Because that will just lead to a never-ending cycle of spending that will deplete your wealth. That's just a fact. So managing the hedonic treadmill is one of the first things. Go to truewealth.moneyvikings.com, the blog. We have things from psychologists on ways to manage that, tips and tricks. Okay. The next one is automating your way to success. So again, this is a little bit of a psychological episode, as you can see, because we have to automate our way to success because we will constantly get in our own way. We have like a monkey brain, basically. Look at society, look how humans behave. We're very focused on this moment. We have a very hard time thinking about ourselves 10, 15, 20 years in the future and putting away money in investments. We have a very hard time with the ups and downs of the stock market. It's very scary for a lot of people. And what ends up happening is they get frozen. Fear oftentimes freezes people in place. So fear freezes them, you know. They talk about that. When some scary sort of event like a mass shooting or something happens, most people freeze. That's and I think you can see that in nature with like deer when like a gunshot goes off. I think they freeze. And so the point being, we have to get out of our own way to build wealth. And the classic way to do it is to automate your way. And so that at a minimum, a person has got to be automating into their 401k, IRA, whatever it is, into some sort of solid diversified account with low fees. And I'm a big fan of going 10% or more every month of savings and investing. Okay. So that's number 2, simple path to wealth. Number 3, you got to know yourself. There's a classic Greek saying, know thyself. Know your investing and saving type. What does this mean? Everyone has a different risk tolerance as a spectrum. Some people love certain kinds of risk. They go bungee jumping and jump out of airplanes and whatever, risky behavior. So we have a spectrum of risk, right? Some people are risk junkies. Some people absolutely are terrified by risk and they don't want anything to do with it and they want to minimize risk. A lot of investing has to do with managing risk. That is, I think, actually the clear point of having a diversified, resilient, thoughtful portfolio of assets that are in line with your specific risk tolerance. And so you have to know your investing and saving type. But here's my caution to those who are extremely risk averse out there if you're listening. And leave a comment. Talk to me about I will write back to you. I like to talk to people. So talk to me about your aversion or your love of risk. Are you too far on either end? Do you need to be more in the middle? I'm in the middle. I think I try to be in the middle. I try to be balanced with a lot of things. So I try not to be a huge risk taker, but I don't want to be afraid. I want to be somewhere in the middle, like a balance. But here's the bad news for people that are extremely risk averse. So if you are just putting your money in a savings account, that is losing buying power every single year. We've clearly been smacked in the face with that over the last 3-4 years with inflation. It seems to be under control. Things have stopped going up as much. They're going up much slower now. They're still a bit high. Incomes, I think, are trying to catch up. But it takes a while to unwind that. But the point being, none of us can really afford, unless we're going to live very stoically like a monk later on, which is fine. Our investing is the only way to keep up with the rising cost of living. We need to be beating inflation. So anyway, you got to know your investing and savings type. That's number 3, simple path to wealth. Number 4, develop emotional IQ. So I threw this one in here because wealth is way more than a number. There's probably people with a lot of money that are just miserable and don't really like their life, and they don't really like the relationships around them. So it's really important to do what you can to develop your own emotional intelligence. And this isn't easy for any of us as humans, but I think it's critical. And so the point being, find your own way to develop your own emotional intelligence. And maybe there's so many, that's the thing I say, there's so many resources now. There's so many podcasts, books, free stuff that's free, right? Where you can learn about human psychology. You can learn how to be a better partner, better in a marriage, better parent. None of us is going to be perfect. We're just not going to happen. Not the way this is all going down. It's impossible. But we can be better. We can improve. And that's the key. I think that will add a lot actually to your bottom line and to just your health and overall wealth. Okay, last one I want to talk about. Find ways to be giving and helpful. Some of the most miserable and unwealthy people I know are actually selfish. They just spend every moment. Now, listen, we're all selfish to a certain degree. We can't help it. We're human creatures. And we obviously have to look out for our own interests and take care of our own mind and body and all this kind of stuff. And we can be a bit selfish, right? In our protecting our ego and humanness, I guess. But there really is a healthy balance here. Giving back and helping other people, I really believe with my heart, leads to a life of true wealth. So at the end of the day, over the decades, I think you'll find that the times where you could help someone, you'll look back and think of as some of your happiest moments. I really believe that. So that's it. That's my simple path to wealth. Five ways right there. And Check out truewealth.moneyvikings.com. We have all kinds of great articles. Here's one I did years ago, or last year: 7 habits that will get you ahead of 95% of people. It's kind of along the same lines of stuff we talked about, but I think you'll find it inspirational. This is a way that we're trying to give back. Jerry and I, that's what Money Vikings is about. We're trying to give back. We're trying to be of service to other people. And I was going to go through this today, but I'm not going to. It was various asset classes. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, thanks for watching. Build your own true wealth. Please comment. What's your best way, your simple way of building wealth? I'd like to know. Take care. Take care of each other.